Hello and welcome back to the Week in Sustainability. I am Melissa Ray, Chief Sustainability Officer of Sustain Life. This is where we get together with you each week to bring to you the top news in sustainability happening across the globe. I am joined today by a somewhat new face to you, our coworker, Ben Gruitt from our sustainability team. And there's a couple stories that we want to share with you this week. So I'm going to kick it off with the downer for the segment. And this is that Vanguard has dropped out of the Net Zero Asset Managers Alliance, or NZAM. So let's break this down. If you don't know, Vanguard, this is the world's second largest asset manager after BlackRock, with over $7.1 trillion in assets under management and over 30 million customers. So what have they done here? They've pulled out of NZAM, which is a financial alliance that was established back in December of 2020, dedicated to tackling climate change with a goal of achieving net zero emissions by 2050. Now, you might be more familiar with the acronym of GFANZ, which is the umbrella organization that was established at COP26 in Glasgow, of which NZAM is a member of. So kind of a similar alliance there if you're more familiar with GFANZ. But let's talk about what happened here, okay? The official party line from the company spokesperson of Vanguard reads, and I quote, "We have decided to withdraw from NZAM so that we can provide the clarity our investors desire about the role of index funds and about how we think about material risks, including climate-related risks, and to make clear that Vanguard speaks independently on matters of importance to our investors." All right, so too long, didn't read. What does that mean? They're basically saying that because index funds are meant to expose their investors to broad market conditions through passive investment, it's not really their place to direct their investment thesis towards the climate agenda, if not explicitly requested by their investors. So that's one way of looking at it. But let's take a bit of a perhaps more pessimistic, or what I'll call the real deal. Okay, what's been going on behind the scenes is that Vanguard has actually been receiving increased pressure from, no surprise, GOP lawmakers to abandon the climate agenda and supporting initiatives. So the GOP lawmakers have pursued several tactics, including a request to FERC, which is a Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, not to renew the Vanguard's authorization to buy shares of U.S. utility companies, given their support of net zero emissions. Okay, so what this looks like is, because Vanguard would most likely not be buying stock in US coal plants because of their participation in this alliance and their general commitment towards net zero, Republicans tried to actually remove their buying power entirely from the US utility market. NZAM membership is essentially viewed as a boycott on fossil fuels, so that obviously doesn't sit very well with GOP coal country representatives. So why this stinks, frankly, and what it means: as the second largest asset manager in the world, Vanguard has over $7 trillion in AUM, which represented 10% of NZAM's membership. So this is a pretty significant blow to the power and size of the alliance. A valuable quote that I found from Climate Tech VC was, "If the ESG investment movement loses momentum, so does the coffer of institutional capital that's dedicated to financing private climate tech, both direct investments and indirect ESG mandates to fund early stage climate tech investors." So it all just goes to show that by dropping out of this alliance, there's a real danger and vulnerability in just the flow of capital to climate tech and climate tech investments. So that's a little bit of a downer this week from me, but I've got Ben here to give us some good news for the week. Ben, can you kick it off with some scientific breakthroughs?
Yes, thanks, Alyssa. So if you've been following the news at all this week, you've probably seen this story everywhere. And that's after decades of research and billions of dollars spent, scientists at the Lawrence Livermore National Laboratory in California successfully produced a nuclear fusion reaction that resulted in a net energy gain. This has been the holy grail of energy productions for decades, as it's the same process that powers the sun, yet they've never been able to produce more energy than it costs to create the reaction itself. So real quick, nuclear fusion happens when two or more atoms are fused together into a larger one, as opposed to nuclear fission, which you may be familiar with from nuclear power plants across the world, which is when a larger atom is split into smaller ones. Fusion has a couple of major benefits over current fission technology, and that's that it creates large amounts of energy, several times greater than fission, and it also doesn't generate long-lived radioactive waste, that you'd be familiar with nuclear power plants. Really, really exciting breakthrough this week, but I'm going to be just a little bit of a wet blanket here because we're a very long way off from scalable fission reactors. There's a host of hurdles to overcome to scale this technology appropriately, including the cost of the equipment. Was produced in a very specialized lab that produces unique lasers and computer chips just for this particular scientific breakthrough. There's technical challenges. This particular reaction was produced in the world's largest laser, and the reaction lasted only billions of a second. Both really hard technological challenges to overcome, as well as the material scarcity. So one of the main isotopes used in this reaction is called tritium. It has a half-life of 12.3 years and costs about $30,000 per gram to produce. So it's extremely rare and getting rarer all the time. So a lot to overcome there. So I would say for the time being, let's celebrate this milestone in technological achievement while we focus on the scalable technologies at our fingertips that can help individuals and organizations reduce their emissions today. Energy efficiency, as well as renewable energy plus storage.
Love it. Love it. Okay. Wow. That feels like a lot. I mean, major scientific breakthrough. That's pretty major. I know it's not quite there, but still pretty exciting. I've got one more exciting one that came in, just widening our sphere to the international global scope. So last week, France announced a ban on short haul domestic flights, which is pretty cool. It's basically a law that is going to ban domestically within the country flights that could be achieved by a 2.5 hour or less train ride. And so I think a little bit of the fine print on this one is that it's actually only impacting 3 primary routes. It's essentially Paris to a couple of other cities, Bordeaux, Lyon, and Nantes, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. But what I think is really incredible about this is that it demonstrates a national commitment of the government really changing the, frankly, culture and transportation infrastructure, committing to a low carbon future. Which is pretty incredible to see, and I think will hopefully be a bit of an example for a lot of other European countries and eventually the rest of the world to follow.
I would pick a train over a plane any day of the week, so music to my ears.
Love it. Okay, well, that's what we have for you this week. Thank you, everyone, for joining us, and we will see you again next week for more sustainability in the news.